The woke brigade, I think maybe are just this generation's jihadis. They're the new jihadis. Maybe they're just the new ISIS. I mean, ISIS were the new Al Qaeda, but who's the new ISIS? Do you know what I mean? There isn't one, so it's got to be them. Now I say this, and you're probably thinking, "Oh, that's a bit crazy." That's like Nigel Farage. Well, you remember Nigel Farage? He's the man that chased Bob Geldof around on a boat on the River Thames shouting about fish. Well, he said that when these BLM activists were marching through towns and tearing down statues, that it was like ISIS, because they did similar things to that. A bit hyperbolic, a bit sensationalist, a bit provocative maybe. But is it? Because by the end of this, you might have a completely different outlook on this whole situation. Okay? So you're going to have to stick with me to find out what happens, aren't you? Anyway, welcome to the Knowledge and Ignorance podcast. I am your host, Chisel Jaw's Sexy Face, aka Rebus. And that sound was just for you. So, Michael Malice, how do you describe Michael Malice? I guess he's an author. Is he an online media personality? I mean, what's his handle? What's in his passport? I don't know. Does he have a passport? Oh yeah, he must have been an Oprahrian. Anyway, he labelled this sort of woke movement as jihadis without the testosterone, which is a very good description of what they are, because they use fear tactics to get what they want. Essentially, people may say that they're not as dangerous as jihadis because they haven't really killed anyone, although people are dying in America, for sure, on both sides of the equation, admittedly, but people still are dying. But the fact is, maybe they're just in their, serial killers, right? They don't start off as full-grown humans. They're not that crazy. So they start off like, in general, torturing and killing animals. So maybe this group of people are just in the kitten torturing stage. And maybe in 10 years they'll move on to killing much bigger things. That's something to look forward to. You see, we're living in a bit of an odd time where it is a repeat of 2016. I keep saying this, but it literally is. I mean, it started off with the same YouTube beefs as 2016, and now Black Lives Matter emerged again as if it's 2016 again. I mean, I thought they had completely disappeared. Not the statement or the hashtag or nothing, but like the organization, but they're back. And people kind of forget that that's kind of why Donald Trump got into power in the first place, because everything was getting a bit silly. In fact, the media, he came in at just the right time. He was in the right place at the right time with the right things to say. Now, you can go on about his rhetoric about immigration and blah, 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 but the fake news thing, I think, was the biggest thing. Because in 2016, the news cycles were perpetuated. And there was a perpetuation of division and anger and outrage, and it was mainly by mainstream media news outlets. The whole Michael Brown thing was completely twisted, whereas people don't actually know what actually happened, which was proven in a court of law with countless autopsies and blah, 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 blah. But they just kept going with that narrative. The same thing is happening now, except obviously the George Floyd situation is a little bit different because it's on camera. But it is the same rhetoric. The police are racist. Fuck the police. The thing is, mistrust in the media didn't just start then. People that got fed up with them about a year before, Charlie Hebdo. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Charlie Hebdo, a couple of brothers went to a satirical newspaper that did cartoons of Muhammad that they didn't take too kindly to, and they claimed to be members of Al Qaeda in the Arabian Peninsula, and they shot dead a bunch of cartoonists. I think about 12. Now, in the wake of Charlie Hebdo, everyone did a good bit of virtue signaling. It was a great time for virtue signaling. Maybe it was the dawn of virtue signaling as we know it today. Everyone changed. Remember, you might have done it too. You changed your profile picture to the French flag, and then you wrote in your bio, and you know, in your bio, and you post every day, which is Je suis Charlie, which is I am Charlie. You know, because we must stand for freedom of speech, and we will not cower down to these terrorists and meet their demands. We do not negotiate with terror. We will live our way of life the way we bloody want to. That's right. But with that said, no mainstream news outlets would reprint the cartoons, and none of them would show it on television. And if you look back, just go search it on Twitter, and you can see how many people have a real disdain towards the mainstream media for basically not having balls and not standing by their principles. Going, well, we definitely agree in their right to do it, but we're too scared to put the pictures out. People already had enough of these people. You know, they'd already had enough of the media. Man came at the right time, you know, with his uncouth comments. However, the Charlie Hebdo situation is an interesting one. Because there was a swath of people, I've never used that word before, I hope it means what I think it does. There was a swarm, there was people, yeah. I remember reading James Bloodworth, who was a left-wing, he's a very insufferable left-wing journalist, who I went to school with, and I knew. We're Eskimo brothers, actually. We are Eskimo brothers. I don't know what happened to her. Last I heard, she was a screw in jail. Interesting. Anyway, I digress. But I remember him writing about stuff, because I never really went on Twitter or nothing like that. And he said, you know, if I hear any more people saying that the French deserved this, that they deserve this attack, and I think that was in reference to a few attacks as well, then, you know, you can unfollow me and I'm blocking you, because that's a ridiculous position to have. So what was this underlying belief that, you know, they got what they deserved, as in, well, they should have known not to do that. Because, yeah, Charlie Hebdo, you know, there was a firebomb attack before then. They got hacked. And back in 2006, one of the attacks at Charlie Hebdo happened in 2015, if I forgot to mention that, and in case you forgot, well, you shouldn't forget. Je suis Charlie, all right? But in 2006, they were taken to court, you know, with charges of racist and xenophobic charges. They weren't prosecuted, though. So they've always had a bit of shit. And, you know, getting firebombed is definitely an indication of going, wow, we might be winding a couple of people up here. But they carried on. Do you know what I mean? They carried on. They said, nah, you ain't doing this. And then after a massacre, the world was shocked, but we carry on. But the thing is, Charlie Hebdo just sort of blends in with the spate of terror attacks that happened in Europe. You know, between like 2013 and 2017, really. It was insane. I remember, you know, it's not that long ago, when 2017, when it seemed like it was never ending. And then suddenly in 2018, it all just went away. And I regurgitate this stuff I say a lot, but I need the message to get drilled home. They told us that there was 20 to 30,000 known jihadis in the UK. And the security services and the police said, we do not have the resources. We've had so many cuts on staff and funding. We don't have the resources to deal with these people. And after London Bridge and that, we were like, what the fuck, man? Oh my God, we're doomed. Then 2018, everything just stopped. Now, maybe because, you know, ISIS were on the, you know, they were falling as a force. But to go from the dizzy heights of 2017 to 2018 was very strange. And then suddenly they were like going, no, it's the far right we need to worry about. I was like, huh? Well, where have these jihadis gone? No one's ever explained to me where the fucking jihadis went. There was 20 to 30,000 of them, they said. Where are they? Where are they? But as I said, you know, Charlie Hebdo gets mixed up in that chaotic time of just, you know, horrendous attacks, especially in France. They had the worst, you know, the most memorable ones, the guy that drove the truck, you know, through killed 86 people, was it 83 or 86? It's a lot. And then, of course, the Paris attacks later in the year. Yeah, the attacks in the UK in 2017 pale in significance to the ones that happened in France. No disrespect to the dead or anyone's pain, but the coordinated Paris attacks at that death metal concert, the football match, and the restaurant was something else. Charlie Hebdo, the attack in Nice and the other attack in Paris were all pretty mental in comparison to everywhere else. This was some mental shit. So Charlie Hebdo, gets lost in the mix. There were even The Guardian and Vox had articles about how we must defend their right to, offend. We must defend their right to be offensive. One journalist wrote, I can't remember her name, she was like, I find there's many things I find offensive, but the whole reason I can say that I find things offensive is because I have freedom of speech to say that I find things offensive. Do you know what I'm saying? It reminded me when I was at university, and I was a lot older when I went to university, and I don't know, I thought it was a good idea. I just did it to prove a point. I just thought I'd become a sellout and see what it felt like. But I do remember reading a sign in the toilets of all places saying that we will not tolerate any intolerance towards, homosexuals and blah, 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 blah. I don't know why I just said homosexuals and blah, 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 blah. But, all the ones that get the abuse. And I was like, well, we do not tolerate intolerance. Well, where's the tolerance for my intolerance? Just a thought. That's not really encouraging freedom of expression, is it? Because you might just go, I don't really like them, to be honest. Nothing against them, but it's their clothes. I hate them. You can say, well, yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Say, I just don't like men in crop tops and sparkly cowboy hats. And I know what you're thinking, going, God, how awful are you? It's like, yeah, but I don't care. It's funny, isn't it? So the point is, people don't really agree with freedom of expression, especially if you've got a double standard. Now, no one's got bigger double standards than the woke mob, who used to be called SJWs. Now they're the woke, and I'm pretty sure, like ISIS, who got relabeled Daesh and IS and ISIL, I'm pretty sure that eventually their name will change again to the League of Soldiers for Utopia or something like that, something like that. Along those lines, or fuck Israel, because they all hate Israel too. So maybe that'd be a nice snappy title for them to have. Just fuck Israel. That's pretty much all of them say that. So it's a unifying thing, isn't it? Yeah, they could just have that. See, Charlie Hebdo was the example of real cancel culture. I mean, we're talking about cancel culture is the latest thing everyone's talking about. So, it's gone from COVID-19 to racism to statues to cancel culture. And there's people saying that cancel culture doesn't exist. Well, that's bullshit. Cancel culture does exist, Charlie Hebdo was cancel culture. I mean, you can't get more cancel-y than that when someone shoots you dead. I mean, you're cancelled. You're fucking cancelled, mate. And think about other organizations or TV. Think about a TV show that could drum up that much fucking outrage where people got. They'd shut it down. They would shut it down. Charlie Hebdo was I'm going to tell that was a real turning point for a lot of things where actually people didn't agree with freedom of expression. I think we're living in a moment where there's a mixture of feelings going around. You have this woke brigade, and it's made up of about 3 different types of people. There's the jealous, there's the scared, and the inspired. And sometimes they kind of, they're interchangeable and they mix together, but that is who they are. So who are these people? What do you mean, the scared, the inspired, and the jealous? Well, I'm going to tell you a story first, and then we'll get to it, okay? So, think about Charlie Hebdo in mind, and about how people were so outraged and pissed off that they went and killed people, and yet everyone was like, we must defend our way of life, and that is freedom of expression. Our way of life. Keep that in mind. Also keep in mind that it is, in general, a lot of people say it, and this school of thought is pretty accurate, that fundamentalist fanatics of any religion do not need a reason to be pissed off, especially if you're completely fanatical. They'll say it's because you're occupying the lands. They'll say it's because of the military, the meddling in our countries. They'll say it's because you don't respect our prophet, and you don't respect our gods and our way of life, and blah, 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 blah. But at the end of the day, look at the mentality of ISIS and Al-Qaeda. It is because they do not like our way of life. That's the Western way of life. They don't like it. And it's always an attack on the Western way of life. It's getting us to change our ways through fear and submission. It always has been. You can look at the bios and the interviews of all these people, because some will argue that, people join ISIS, like Russell Brand go, people join ISIS because they're poor. They're poor and they're hungry. It's like, bollocks. There's kids from the UK, and there was doctors, there was people who were doing really well in university. There was people who had so many prospects, like had the whole world was ahead of them, and they decided to fuck off to Syria and shoot people and chop off heads. Do you know what I mean? Not everyone was like Jihadi John. Who is the woke Jihadi John? Owen Jones. He is the new Jihadi John. Anyway, so and often they'll cite, because they see the way that Western society has corrupted their brothers and sisters, as in those of the Muslim faith, through drugs and sex and all this stuff. And admittedly, in the UK, we are we've got a very high rate of teenage pregnancy. We are one of the largest consumers of narcotics in the fucking world, and we do binge drink like crazy. I mean, something is very wrong in our society. That is true. There is a corruption within British society. I don't know where it stems from or what it is, but there's some bad shit going on. But also, we're free. We're free to make a lot of different choices, bad choices. We got so much freedom that we forget that cocaine's illegal. You wouldn't go into a pub on a Friday night and you wouldn't even think cocaine was illegal. You'd be like, when did they legalize that? That's how it is. But they don't like the way of life, and they think it's corrupted people, and that's why they choose to fight against. They'll get radicalized. That's how you get radicalized. And that's why they want to introduce a caliphate with Sharia law. They don't like the Western way of life. They forget all their silly excuses. They don't need an excuse. I think Christopher Hitchens said that a lot. It's a fallacy that they need an excuse or because they were offended. Do you know what I mean? And they'll also give the excuse of like, well, you killed a bunch of kids in our country, so we're going to go kill a bunch of kids at Ariana Grande concert. Okay? The tit for tat thing, as if this is some gangster shit, as if this is Chicago, in the back in the day. Yeah, shit. He pulls out a knife, you pull out a gun. He sends one of your men to the hospital, you send one of his to the morgue. That is Sean Connery speaking, in Chicago. That's the Chicago way. Like there's this tit for tat thing, and therefore, there's no excuse for that kind of bullshit anyway. But that's a load of nonsense too. The problem is that we've allowed a very dangerous precedent, and this has been bubbling up for decades now, since 9/11 basically, of that there is the rhetoric, we will not be terrified, we will not stop using the tubes, we will not stop going to concerts, we will not stop going to fucking restaurants, we will be united and we will not be scared. But people have been scared, and slowly they've taken away more of our rights to expression. This is because of fear. Majority of the time this is for fear. And I'll give you an example why. Because the police and the security services basically don't want no smoke. They don't want problems. This is quite clear. See, this is how I think people got it twisted. Don't remember the situation where I think it was one Austrian guy and Blackbird, that hot right wing. They are all hot in it. What is it with these modern fucking conservative independent journalists being super smoking hot? What is that? What is that? Have you seen Lauren Chen? I seen a video when she had her hair in pigtails like this. I was like, I melted into the screen. I was like, sorry, we're trying to talk real serious here, and I'm here just acting like some sort of misogynist. I apologise. Brittany Pettibone and Lauren Southern were refused entry into the UK. Now, many people, because they're right wing, they go, oh, this is against the freedom of expression, and, they're on the side of Muslims. They're scared of the truth. Well, no. You see, I'm not sure what happened with Brittany Pettibone's situation, but I do know Lauren Southern was in Luton, of all places. Now, Luton is the hotbed of lunacy. We know many jihadis have come out of Luton. Tommy Robinson's come out of Luton. Britain First go to Luton with their cross going, worship Jesus. Luton's always, and Luton is a shithole. So, you live in Luton, you've got racial and religious tensions, and it's Luton. You're like, my life's shit. And then suddenly you see the EDL or some Islamic fundamentalist nut train marching through your town going, oh, come on, aren't things bad enough? But Lauren Southern was in Luton, and they would, do this provocative experiment of, because obviously people can outwardly say Jesus is gay and so forth. Jesus is gay, no one cares because we're Christians. So they have these leaflets saying, Muhammad's gay or something, to show or to prove a double standard or to show a hypocrisy or whatever. But then when she left the country and tried to come back in, she was refused entry to the UK under the Terrorism Act. Acts that probably right-wing people such as Lauren Southern would have been in favour of 10, 15 years ago. It does, and there's the lesson learned. It comes to bite you back on the ass. So think before you do something. But the reason, this is what I think the main reason is, and this is very obvious, I think, is because the security services and the police don't want no smoke. They know Luton's a hotbed of fucking bullshit, especially because Tommy Robinson's from there. So they don't want people coming there and stirring the pot, do you know what I mean? Causing a bit of friction, unnecessary friction. They don't want it. They don't want that shit going down. They don't want someone riling up Islamic fundamentalist nut jobs, and giving them an excuse to cause an atrocity. They're scared. They'd rather not have the problem, and therefore they will use the Terrorism Act to tell Lauren Southern, yeah, you can't come back in the country. That's it. It's just to keep everything chilled. That was the reason. That's the reason. And they do this so often. That's why they're shutting down Britain First. They don't particularly care about Britain First's opinions. They don't particularly care, about them doing their marches and stuff. And they don't particularly care even if they're racist. They are just provocateurs. They are going to provoke something from these jihadis that they've been scared of all this time. That's what they look at it. They look at them and go, no, they're a problem. Because it doesn't take too much to wind these crazy people up. And then they explode. And then they explode our children. That's why they shut these people down. It's through fear and wanting to maintain a level of peace. They would rather have everything very mundane and peaceful than have a lively and raucous debate about stuff. They don't want no smoke. That's it. Their actions always lead to this kind of thing. Because they have allowed Islamic fundamentalists to have too much power in the sense that they've given in. They have succumbed to the fear that they have. It's happened. You go way back. Way back. You look at Charlie Hebdo and you're like, oh, well, people don't want that to happen again. But go way back to 2005, okay? Now, in 2005, there was my blood clot neighbor, he's always up here just shut the fuck up, bruv. We're talking serious shit here. Shut your blood clot mouth, Go back to 2005. Jerry Springer the Opera was first broadcasted on the BBC. Now, if you're unfamiliar with Jerry Springer the Opera, it's not really an opera, it is a musical. It's one of those weird musicals where it's all like Evita, where there's no dialogue, where they're just singing everything. And I'm pretty sure the only person who speaks dialogue is the character of Jerry Springer on the show, and everyone else is just singing. It's a very controversial show because it portrayed Jesus as a homosexual in a nappy, as an ineffectual, useless motherfucker. And it also had like the devil, and it had the Ku Klux Klan doing a tap dance number. You know, it was very silly but very controversial. Written by Stuart Lee and another guy. The whole point, well, Stuart Lee wanted. He actively stated in 2004, if I could cause, violent, like religious outrage, if I could incite religious hatred, that's what he said. He actually said, if I could incite religious hatred, then that would be a job well done, basically. But he did say the words incite religious hatred. He said it'd be a good thing. So it's broadcasted on the BBC. It had, it was a very successful musical at the National. I think it was at the National Theatre. And then there was a lot of protests. There was a complaint. There was like 55,000 complaints sent in from angry Christians, ones that had seen the show, and possibly, most likely 80% of them were from people who just heard about it and hadn't even seen it, as is the case with most stuff. That is people. That is the mob. This is what we know. So they were up in arms about it. And they went and protested outside BBC buildings. And when the thing went on tour, they went and protested its tour. I mean, they were protesting. Hardline Christian groups and allegedly some members of the BNP were also protesting and trying to have it shut down in somewhere like Brighton or somewhere like that, bizarrely. Stuart Lee was, being given some shit by hardline Christians and BNP. And a lot of the protests were led by a group called Christian Voice. I don't know if they still exist or not. And their spokesman was a guy called Stephen Green. Now, Stephen Green was interviewed outside BBC buildings, and he says, and Stephen Green, and I remember this very clearly from the time, because he said this sort of statement that a lot of people say, and you hear it now, saying, just imagine if this had been about, Muslim, if this has depicted Muhammad as as an ineffectual homosexual, or if they depicted Vishnu in such a way, this play wouldn't have seen the light of day. The Christians were angry because, now at that time, maybe a little bit, but it is true. The outrage caused by depicting Muhammad in such a way, as we've seen with the South Park cartoons, where they literally just had a black block walking around, and obviously what happened with Charlie Hebdo. These things will get shut down. The guy did have a point, because Christianity is always something that can have the fun poked at it. Because most of them aren't nutters who kill people, okay? Even the most crazy Christians aren't really murderers. Do you know what I'm saying? So maybe you should just think about that in a different respect, going, yeah, we are the super chill religion, thank you. We can take a joke. Wouldn't it be nice if you could just be the religion that takes a joke? That's what you're known as. The cool religion. But anyway. But he did that kind of out of the point. Because not long before that, so this was like in January of 2005. Now, in December of 2004, there was a play in Birmingham called Bejti. I can't remember the writer's name. There's a Sikh lady, a British Sikh lady, wrote this play. And it was at the Birmingham Rep Theatre, I believe. Now, Bejti takes place inside a Sikh temple, and there's like scenes of there's rape and paedophilia and domestic violence. A lot of bad shit happens in this temple, basically. And local Sikh leaders in Birmingham were pretty upset about the depiction of their beloved temple, being basically like Jeffrey Epstein's temple. Maybe a bit of foreshadowing there, but. So they protested Bejti on its opening night. It was mostly peaceful, but there was a little bit of a clash. I think 3 people ended up getting arrested. Now, a day later, on that weekend, there was a meeting held. It was between the owner of the theatre, the local police, local Sikh leaders, and some organisation that deals with racial inequality. I can't remember their name. They had a meeting. And at the end of this meeting, they said, right, we're cancelling the play. It was cancelled after opening night because of the offensive clause. Whereas Jerry Springer wasn't cancelled. But when they tried to take it on tour later on in the year, the UK Arts Council, which had previously, I believe, funded the initial run at the National Theatre, pulled out of funding the nationwide tour because, now they said because it was too commercial. But the producer, I think his name's John Thoday, said, no, they're succumbing to the pressure. Because also a lot of the venues that were going to host the musical, initially, after the protests and the outrage was stirring up, they suddenly pulled out too. And they were citing the fact that they were being picketed by fucking, hardline Christians. So that's a bit of cancel culture there. The reason I bring this up is because not long after that, they brought in new racial hatred laws. It was in the same year of making it a crime for basically, for criticizing religion. But you could get in a lot of trouble. And this is in the wake of these things. Racial hatred laws. No, religious hatred. Which basically was more or less, Beshti and Jerry Springer the Opera, faced backlash from Sikhs and Christians. But it was the stuff that was being done about Muslims that was really concerning people because of the environment that we're living in. We're living in 9/11, Afghanistan, and Iraq. This was the beginning of a not so super chill time. Now they tried to sue Jerry Springer the Opera. They tried to sue the controller of the BBC and the producer of the show. They tried to sue them for under blasphemy laws. And this was thrown out of court. Well, no, not thrown out of court, but they didn't get in trouble. The point is, you listen to Stephen Green, it's like if they did that to them, then they'd be in trouble. There's kind of a bit of jealousy there, I think. And there's also a double standard on the horizon, because there is a double standard. So this is an indication of jealousy and double standards. Okay. Now we know, rolling on through the years, we know that the woke brigade do have double standards, because they'll speak out about, saying stereotyping people and saying racist things towards people, and yet they will say the most horrendously racist things about certain people. They will say things about Jews as well. All right. There is a double standard. There is one rule for them and another rule for us. We can say what you want, but you can't say what you want. There can be freedom of expression and freedom of speech, but only if it fits under this criteria. Not if you're saying that, not if you're saying that, not if you're saying that. That isn't racist because racism doesn't exist underneath that bracket, blah, 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 blah. There is a double standard. Okay? It's all right to do one thing, but not to do another. Do as I say, but not as I do. Now, the jealousy thing, well, that is something else. So let's break it down. You have the jealous. Now, these people, this is the woke lot. Now, the jealous fraction of it, I believe, because of how over the years we have the security services of the media have set a precedent where they've just backed off just little by little against criticisms towards Islam, whereas the whole world was criticizing Islam and it was way too much under the microscope, to reaching a stage where saying pretty much anything will get you in trouble for, the so-called Islamophobia. So the freedom of saying what you want about religion has been slowly eroded away. Now, if you look at other groups, they'll be looking at that going, why can't we get people in trouble as much as, fanatical Muslims do? They probably look at Charlie Hebdo and go, that's how you do it. It's a jealousy. It's a jealousy going, well, they can do it, why can't we? How come they can do that and we can't? How come they'll blank out Muhammad, but, You can still have Big Mama's house. You know, the trans community go, well, how come Martin Lawrence gets to dress up as a lady and be silly and mock our way of life, and no one gets shot or nothing, and there's no black fucking square in front of him when he's broadcasting on television? Huh? Why can't we have that? Jealousy. They're looking at the tactics. And then there's another thing, the inspired. Because they're like going, that's how you do it. That's how you do it. They know. If you stir up enough fear into people, then they will succumb to the pressure. They will succumb to what you want. They've seen it happen in real time. You got people who be in their 20s who have only grown up in a post 9/11 world, you know. And all they would have seen is people cowering down, succumbing to the pressures of terror. Yes. Fearful. People getting shut down. Cancel culture is just it's just an extension of that mindset. It's like, we will use fear and intimidation in order to silence you and to get what we want. It's no different. And it's all supported by a fanatical, fundamentalist ideology. Whereas what they label Islamists, who have a very weird, you know, a very twisted interpretation of the readings of the Quran. The woke brigade are the same. They have a very weird and twisted interpretation of oppression and the worldview. But they do share the same thing, is that they despise the Western world and they want to bring it to its knees and they want to tear down the system. Am I wrong about that? We don't like women drinking, not wearing a veil. We don't like women fornicating before marriage. No. Drugs and alcohol. Saying what you want, doing what you want. No. These goes against our beliefs. And the woke brigade are like, we don't like this and we don't like that. You can't do this and you can't do that. No. Yeah. They all have been steered towards Marxism. They've all been steered toward this idea that they're going to introduce some sort of free and equal utopia that's completely unsustainable. A bit like the Islamic Caliphate. Everything's conducted under Sharia law. It's the same thing. It's a very similar thing. They're fanatical lunatics. Now, whilst this is all going on, so don't forget, so you've got Islamists are a very small portion of 1 billion people across the planet. You know, 1 billion Muslims across the planet. The fanatics are a very small percentage of those people, but they're very loud, right? And they cause a lot of trouble and a lot of noise. The blue check marks of Twitter and the social justice warriors, the people, the extreme far left, as we can see through a lot of data, they're a very small portion of people, but they are very loud and they cause a lot of fuss and a lot of upset, don't they? Very similar. And what you get in the in-between, who are these other people? Well, they're the third group of these nutters. Right? They're the scared, the weak, the scared. These are the fearful, useless, useful idiots is who they are. Because if you look over the years, if you grow up in a time, and you know, if you've ever paid any attention to the security services or the media, you're going to be terrified. Especially, you know, in the post 9/11 world, it's like, we're going to come for you, and we're going to come for your kids, and you know, they're killing every mother. It was like, they're going to kill everybody, man. What's the best way to get out of that? Deflection. Deflect it away from you. They might read something that you wrote and go, what did you say about Allah, motherfucker? And you're going, oh yeah, but he said something way worse. Self-preservation. So these people, they may have all these beliefs and all these criticisms of different religions and different ways of life and so forth, but they don't want no smoke. Like the security services and the police. They don't want no smoke. So what do? They're scared. But it's the same situation. You know? Have you ever been stood in line for a bus when there's a nutter around? You know, there's 10 people in line for the bus, and there's a nutter coming up with going, yeah, you fucking want it. And you're just thinking, please not me, please not me, please not me. And then they'll start going up in some granddad's face going, you fucking want it, you want it. They're crazy. But then he's picking on granddad, and you're thinking, oh, thank God it's not me. You don't step in. This is proven psychology. You can go look it up about how complicit people will be when they'll see something going on and no one else does anything. They think that's what you're supposed to do. It's a very common occurrence. That may be what happened in the George Floyd case, where you got one guy doing something like that. Are you supposed to be doing that? But the other three are thinking, I guess that's... I mean, he wouldn't be doing something he shouldn't be doing, surely. That's how stupid people are, bro. You know? That's how people are. And you're like, a lot of you are like that. You don't want them coming for you. So when they go for someone else, like, good. And you don't say anything. And then it reaches a stage where it's like, well, if you don't say anything, then you're part of the problem. It's like, oh, it's him, it's him, it's him. It's very Chinese. Very communist. Him, them, get them. They did it. Then you become part of the mob because you're so happy that they didn't come for you because you're a fucking pussy. So then you're going to encourage them to go after other people because you're scared, and therefore you are complicit and you become an enabler because you don't want no smoke on you, and you've probably done something, and when someone else gets busted, you'll pile in and say what a horrible piece of shit they are, and then in order to stop them coming for you again, you'll just join in and go, hey, I found someone who's done something really bad. Look at me with your virtue signaling. Look at me. And a lot of these people are also just trend followers. They really are. I know so many people who just follow the BLM thing like a trend. Literally. It's fidget spinners for these motherfuckers. A lot of people are like that too. They're just following trends, man. Je suis Charlie. With your face like the French flag. You didn't believe in any of that shit. You didn't even know what the fuck it meant. You just followed a trend. So yeah. Maybe there are four then. You got the trend. There's the trend followers and the fucking fearful. Because we have lived in a world of fear, and we've set bad precedents about limiting what we can say in order to not to cause offence. The police and the security services have set a bad precedent because they don't want no trouble, so they're trying to limit any trouble. That's why if you set up something like a Britain First, or you have a Tommy Robinson or whoever it is, they don't want the smoke because they know how crazy these people are. They know that if there's too much trouble from these motherfuckers, it's, they don't want the problems. That's why they'll let the woke brigade run riot as they do. Even though they're a bunch of pussies and they haven't really done anything. You don't give these people an inch because they will take a mile. Right? These old cliched sayings mean something. We do not negotiate with terrorists. This all means something. You're giving way too small a bunch of people way too much power. They are fundamental. They're fanatics. That's what they are. They're inspired by jihadis. They use fear tactics to get what they want and make people succumb to fear. And all the while, you've had the police and the security services don't want anyone. They don't want the trouble. They don't want the trouble. They don't care about, like I said, they don't care who gets offended. They don't want the trouble. They don't want to have to deal with people throwing, because when certain groups of people throw their toys out the pram, people die. Some of these toys are fucking grenades and suicide vests. They don't want that smoke, like I said. So they don't give a fuck about your feelings. It's all about maintaining some peace. That's what it's all about. And now they've set a very dangerous precedent where you have literally a lunatic, fanatical society who are already instigating, who have already, they've They've pulled back laws in California. They've actually undone the civil rights movement in California as we speak. This is insane. When you allow a bunch of people to get what they want removed from, public spaces or from streaming services, or have songs removed from playlists, or have this person fired, or this person publicly shamed, when you allow this sort of fanatical lunacy to go on, which is basically a very uneasy collective of loud voices from a small minority of lunatics, spurred on by enablers, when you allow them to have so much power, you are saying it's dumb. It's stupid. Because they've all been gathered up together under the umbrella of an ideology, from BLM to Extinction Rebellion to fucking whoever it is. When you look at their dossiers, when you look at their manifestos, it's always the implementation of Marxism, the destruction of capitalism. They want to pull the system down. They hate the Western way of life, just like Islamists do, or Jihadis, or whatever you want to call them. It's the fucking same. They don't like it, and they want it gone. They don't like freedom of expression. They don't like freedom. Now, why would we let all these people die in vain? And I'm not just talking the little girls at the Ariana Grande concert. I'm not just talking about juvenile cartoonists at Charlie Hebdo. I'm not just talking about the tens of thousands of people that have died in Afghanistan and Iraq. Why are you going to let all these people die in vain if we're not going to stand up for what we truly believe in? That'd be a fucking tragedy. A tragedy? Would it not? This is how it is. So, it's kind of right to say, look, terrorism is used to stop us going about our business and conducting our way of life. It's, it's destroying us from the inside, from the fear within inside us. So we don't carry on about our business, and we become afraid to do the things we want to do, and afraid to express ourselves the way we want to express ourselves. Well, this is what they're doing. It's just, like I said, you got level 10 lunacy where you're blowing up little kids, and then this is probably a 2 when you're just getting people shut down. But it's got to stop. End of. Because these people may act like they're doing, and on the surface levels, like we're doing it for equality. We're doing it for the oppressed, for the most vulnerable. We want to make changes so everyone in society feels the same way. That's bullshit. It's bullshit. They've just co-opted all these little movements to instigate what they want, to put in place the society they want. They don't give a fuck about none of this shit. Some of these people are the most uncouth, xenophobic, and racist people you could ever meet. They're like going, well, that's okay for you, but not for me. Genital mutilation, they'd be like, that's okay for you, but not for me. If it's retarded, it's retarded. That's the way I see it. Look, I don't care. Fuck your cultural traditions. Are they weird? Are they wacky? All right, well, we don't want them, okay? I think that's fine, isn't it? Saying, well, here in weirdo land, we fuck our children in the ear. It's like, okay, well, you're going to have to leave that one, aren't you? That one's bad. But we've also got thousands of years of wonderful medicine. Yeah, that's good. Keep that. But the ear fucking thing? You're going to have to get rid of that. That's fucked. You're fucked. Ridiculous. But they will champion all the the vulnerable. They talk about the vulnerable and the most needy. Would you know who the most vulnerable people in Western society would be? That's kids in care. And the care system in the UK isn't great as it is. But all the tens of thousands of people in care, think what it's like to be in care. The people who are supposed to love you don't want you or aren't around for you. And you're with, you're in a crumbling system. You're pushed away, so you're on the fringes of society where you feel totally unwanted, unloved. And then you get pimped out by some old, dirty men, drugged up when you're 14 or so forth. and then just used like a piece of meat because they consider you to be an inferior human being. That this isn't, and the problem with this is that because no one's acknowledged this kind of thing, it's been pushed to the fringes as it is, and co-opted by some elements of the far right, but some that's not. But it's now become a apparent far right talking point where the most vulnerable people in society have been left to the wolves because, now they call it political correctness. It's not political correctness. It's because they don't want no smoke. They are scared of the reactions that come from the minority of nutters that inhabit these communities. That's what it's all about. We've been living in an age of fear for 20 years. And because of that, because of their pussy-ass nature, they've let tens of thousands of the most vulnerable people in society be sexually abused. And it's a fucking scandal. It's like, but no one talks about it. It's so weird. It's barely news. And people who try to speak out about it, who are part of the system, have been kicked to the wayside. An actual cover-up. And now they launch an investigation into the cover-up. They're covering up the investigation. And it's like, okay. Because they don't want no smoke. All these people walking around saying, oh, we're trying to protect the vulnerable and the needy. Get fucked. You're a human being at the end of the day. You got to understand that, like, the majority of people are pieces of shit. I hate to break it to you. I'm a piece of shit. You're a piece of shit. You know, we only think about everyone else 10% of the time. That's science, baby. That 90% of the time, you're just thinking about your fucking self. Don't forget all the people that decried the man that owns Weatherspoons and said, oh, he's a bastard, even though that was kind of twisted and taken out of context because he didn't actually do all the things they said. But anyway, look. You know, you have a go at the CEO who wouldn't take a pay cut and then just let all his staff, you know, lose their jobs during the pandemic crisis. And it's like, oh, the bastards. You do the same fucking thing, you piece of shit hypocrite. You ain't taking no pay cut. Oh, I would. Well, that'll never be proven because you're a loser. People walk around like their shit don't stink. Please. See, the difference between me and a lot of other people is that, like, I don't pretend to care and I don't pretend to be virtuous. I never put my face as a French flag and said, Je suis Charlie. Do you know what? Because I didn't care that much at the time. Straight facts, I didn't care. Okay? So why am I going to pretend to care when I didn't care? I care more now because I understand the precedent a bit more. Alright, but I'm not going to go around pretend caring. That's ridiculous. Do I even care that the world's getting taken over by ideological nutcases? Yes, because it's going to affect me and you. So we all have a common sense, you know, a common understanding of self-preservation here that we should, you know, all meet in the middle on. We cannot allow fanatics with weirdo ideas who hate the Western world take charge, and they have. They've infiltrated every aspect of our society. They're in HR, they're in they head up media, entertainment, they're in the fucking government, they're in the social services, they're everywhere. In our education system, this weirdo shit. Put it like this. These are two ways so you will all understand what the fuck I'm talking about. Imagine, scenario one, imagine John Cleese does a live stream. If he can, you know, he's 102, so if he can figure out how to do a live stream, good on him, you know. And he's there crying. I'm so sorry for the life of Brian and all the offence it caused religion. I'm so sorry. And then Nick Griffin. Remember Nick Griffin? He was the leader of the BNP. He's a staunch Christian. And he goes, that's not good enough, Cleese. That's not good enough. And imagine Nick Griffins, all the Nick Griffins, and the Paul Goldings, and the Mark Collettes. Imagine they've all infiltrated the media, HR, education system. You send your child off to university and she comes back And she was this, she was this crazy wild hippie. And she comes back and she literally looks like Goebbels. And she's going, it was the Jews that did it. Do you know what I'm saying? Yeah. And she's going, all the black people need to be rounded up in cages. Yeah. Nick Griffin's head of the fucking BBC. Do you see my point? Well, just flip it around and that's what's fucking going on. And here's another point. Here's for all the right-wing nutters out there. That's for the left-wing to understand. Here's for you right-wing nutters. Because me, I got a tiger on. I'm cool. Okay, it's Anjem Chowdhury. And his fucking... And the Muslim Brotherhood. And they've infiltrated. And there's someone going, I'm sorry for offending all the Muslims. And Anjem Chowdhury's there going, not good enough. And the BBC is constantly spouting out that all women should wear the hijab and not be out after 9 o'clock and need to give in their driver's license because they shouldn't be driving. And the BBC are telling you that. Or if it's the right-wing version, the BBC are telling you that, all mixed-race couples must separate now. In fact, that's pretty much what this far-left ideology is going to lead to anyway. There's already segregation coming back. Do you see? Far right, if it's far right, jihadis, far left, they're all nutters, mate. They're nutters with weirdo ideas. I'm not going to use big words. I just want you to understand. They got weirdo ideas and they want weirdo stuff and they don't like you. They don't like your way of life and they don't like how you act. And they have co-opted every fucking movement that seems good and pure and twisted it and subverted it. And they have. I've been looking at this shit for a long time. And we set the precedent when we introduced all these stupid laws. And when we allow the security services and the police to dictate what we're going to do because they don't want no smoke, because they gave in to fear. And we've allowed this to happen. This is the end result. It's a time of weirdos. So... as the 80s mantra used to go about drugs, just say no. It's time to stop being complicit and be an enabler and just go, no. You don't have to shout at people. You don't have to even disagree with them. You just got to laugh, okay? Because if some guy knocks on your door and says, worship Jesus or die, or someone says, worship Allah or die, or says, you must agree with everything we agree with, that there's 86 different genders or die, laugh in their face. You're ridiculous. Now get off my fucking doorstep. Because it is ridiculous. It is just, we're just going to have to mock it all into submission. Because it's just gone too far now. So yeah, they are a lot like jihadis. And... we've allowed the precedent to let fear dictate everything that we do, including just losing our livelihoods and begging for forgiveness from people who will never forgive because they don't care. It doesn't matter about the outrage, it doesn't matter about the offense. They want to bring the whole fucking thing to its knees. So it doesn't matter. They have the end goal. ISIS had the end goal. Hitler had the end goal. Nutters have their end goal. So don't believe the hype. Bin these lunatics off. And then we'll wait a few years and deal with another bunch of lunatics. It's the beauty of life. Anyway, it's been a pleasure as always. Keep tickety-boo safe. Be safe. And no, get vitamin D in you. You need more vitamin D. All of you, especially if you've got darker skin and you're living in the West, you need to have more vitamin D. It will do you. All of you. Okay? More vitamin D. Alright? I want to do that. Okay? And eat your greens. Alright? I'm being serious. I'll be checking.